right, everybody, it's a lockdown throwback edition of the David Samson Show. David is kind enough to join us every week on Thursdays. He is the host of Nothing Personal with David Samson. Make sure to check that out. Follow him on Twitter at David P. Samson. David, there's a lot to get into with you right now. The MLB season has come to a close. The Marlins are a team searching for an identity, restarting with a manager. Who knows what's going on with ownership? I want to get into that, but let's get into what was grabbing a lot of people's attention yesterday on Twitter, and that was an interview done by Colin Cowherd with the star quarterback of the AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, talking about concussions and not exactly doing the NFL any favors with what he said, David.
It's crazy. I just recorded Nothing Personal. It'll be out soon, maybe now, by the time you're listening to this. It's crazy because what he said was basically, hey, it's all part of the game. You can hurt your knee, you can hurt your elbow, you can get a concussion. Hey, I've not remembered halves, he said. I've not remembered full games, he said. But you know what? It's all good. We get paid handsomely. And anyway, and here's the kicker, pun intended, it's not long lasting. The guy's 25 years old talking to us that concussions aren't long-lasting when there's $1 billion settlement for the very, very thing that he's saying doesn't exist, proving that it does exist, that not only are they long-lasting, but they're life-changing and sometimes life-ending. Yeah,
I didn't really get the final part of that because he was giving voice to all the Benin Amalu concerns, all the Chris Nowinski concerns, and then just applied nonsensical science at the very end. But this is a problem for Roger Goodell. And the NFLPA, I think, has been very smart with their rhetoric in their press releases. They hold a share of the responsibility here with regards to the concussion protocols. They exercise their right to fire the independent neurologist, but they're projecting all of this onto the NFL, and given the NFL's history, maybe they're wise to not play that game out in the media with some of their statements, and they're just kind of falling on the sword here. What do you make of that dance being played out in the media between the NFLPA and the NFL with regards to head trauma?
So this is page 4 of the union playbook when it comes to relationships with management. So in baseball, the example is there's 3 arbitrators who hear a case in arbitration, which is how you decide what a player makes in years 3 through 6 of their career. And did you know that both the commissioner's office and the union, if they don't like a decision by an arbitrator, by a panel, they can fire those arbitrators. And believe me, it's a great gig. These arbitrators go to Tampa, or they go to Arizona during cold weather season, not in Tampa, Arizona, and they get to meet players and they get to decide cases. They're well-known arbitrators, huge hourly rates, and boom, they can just get fired if they do not pay attention to the possession arrow. Possession arrow in baseball is what it sounds like in college basketball. When the teams have won 3 arbitration cases in a row, the next arbitration case is going to be won by the player no matter what, because arbitrators don't want to upset one side or the other because they don't want to get fired. And we're okay with that. What's going on here with the independent doctor is they're blaming. It would be like me blaming an arbitrator for a bad decision or for not believing my side of an arbitration case and ruling against me and then telling the commissioner, hey, get rid of that guy. Blaming the independent doctor, which is what the union is going out there publicly and saying, hey, listen, this independent doctor said Tua is ready to go. That was a bunch of horse hockey. He didn't follow the protocols correctly. He didn't make the right decision. We're going to exercise our right to show that we take care of the players, and we're going to fire him. Are you kidding me? Come on, Mike. What a fugazi.
But at the same time, though, David, there is a bigger problem here, and that is that the concussion issue is resurfacing off the back of this Tua thing, and I wonder if labor versus the league is always the context through which we have to view all of these things. Do these two entities not have to get together and say, well, we have a problem here. We're getting back to a period where we were 5 or 6 years ago where concussions ruled the headlines, and there was a major Hollywood movie made about it, and the future of the sport was at peril. And they have to figure out a way to solve the problem of players openly admitting that they've played full games with concussions, that they have multiple brain injuries. I mean, on the basis of what Joe Burrow said, he's headed towards a career path of a minimum of a dozen head injuries. Do they not have to put their heads together and for a moment stop being adversarial and start trying to solve a problem?
That's called PR. So I think that the PR may have been working the last couple of years if you're saying that it's now resurfacing. I think the exact word you used, Witty, is resurfacing, right? Did you say that the concussion issue is
yes.
resurfacing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not resurfacing. It hasn't gone anywhere. There's actually no change. The difference was there was this big settlement. Then they had bad PR because they weren't putting the settlement monies into the right hands because of race. Remember that whole thing that we covered on this show for sure. Then it bubbled down. It's all been about PR. What's bubbling up now is a great quarterback named Tua in a great market with a great team, one of the all-time great teams in football, Miami. He all of a sudden is on camera spasming. That's PR. There's nothing different going on. So the league and the union never work together on PR. They always do their own statements. They always believe that their view of PR is the right one. We've tried so many times with the players union to do joint statements, even when it comes to like hurricane relief. And it's hard to get together on that. Forget concussions. So the real issue that football has is they've got a PR problem and they've got to figure out how to deal with it. And the rule number one when you have a PR problem is you try to squash it. You try to not give it legs so it doesn't last. And you try to control messaging from those who are speaking. And in this day and age with social media, it's really, really hard to control the way it used to be, which is why you see so many PR problems in sports.
Now, David, I was sort of heading somewhere by talking about the players versus league/ownership line of questioning, and that was what's going on with the NWSL right now, which is the U.S. Soccer hired the former acting Attorney General Sally Yates to basically investigate the entire culture of women's soccer. They run the NWSL and found a ton of issues that were unreported, issues of a sexual variety, sexual assault, sexual coercing that led to some really traumatic instances for players and really bad work environments. And I sort of heard a lot of, what the NWSL commissioners have done, what the organizations have done. And it just always seems like whenever a player comes to the team or comes to the league and says, there is a problem here, that's always due to the context of, well, labor negotiations. Well, if we give the players this, then we have to acknowledge that our institution is failing. And there's never an acknowledgement that maybe we need to completely tear down our organization to the studs because there's a huge cultural problem within our organization. And it's always because it comes down to, well, if we give that, then we're giving an inch in negotiations with our players. And that leads to overall institutional failure. How do you think organizations can be better about that so that things like the NWSL don't happen, so that the NFL actually cares about concussion among their players? Because it just always seems like, and you've talked about this before as it relates to baseball issues, that it's always viewed through the context of, well, if we're giving, then we have to take. It's a push and a pull. It can't just be a push.
Shouldn't there be some issues that have nothing to do with labor? Shouldn't there be some issues where it's just a difference between right and wrong, where everybody agrees what's right and everybody knows what's wrong? Wouldn't that be a great world? Well, that's not the world we live in. That's not the business world of sports. You forgot to mention what happened in hockey. I did a segment on the Women's Soccer League that I want to get to, but let's first go back to hockey with the abuse that took place. Remember when the actual hockey player, professional hockey player, and what Gary Bettman did to try to get that story done with as quickly as possible. And they say the same thing always. We want to make it a safe environment for hockey players from when they're kids up until when they're adults. Go back to Larry Nassar and gymnastics. They say the same thing, PR 101. We want to make it a safe environment for gymnasts, no matter whether they're 7 years old or 25 years old. That is what you do because that is what the PR crisis communicators tell you to say. And that's what happened in the NWSL, where what was going on was unthinkable. Absolutely disgraceful and disgusting. A show not just of misogyny. This is not of just harassment. This was straight up abuse that was happening. And the players in that league came out and said in a statement just a couple days ago, It's not that the owners should be just held responsible. The owners should not be owners. We can't allow them anywhere near our sport if there's ever going to be a recovery. They're trying a different approach in the NWSL that in hockey they didn't try, that in gymnastics they didn't try, that in baseball they don't try, football for sure they don't. And that is players trying to do a hostile takeover of owners. Now, you could argue the NBA just did it with Robert Sarver by having players speak out, and then Robert Sarver was forced to sell. That could be the beginning, and that'd be very interesting if that continues to happen. And what you're seeing in the NWSL is more executives are resigning. However, as they resign, as they're being pushed out, they're saying things like, hey, we did our best. We didn't know for sure. We heard what you were saying, but we didn't follow up the proper way. It is such a disgrace, but it's not getting the right attention because it's not the NBA or the NFL. Even the NHL couldn't get the proper attention for this disgraceful behavior. But when you're dealing with an issue like this, it shouldn't be about labor. We don't make it about the relationship between labor and management because this goes to something far different than money. But the way these leagues treat it, they treat it as a PR problem.
Agreed. And I think when you look into what happened there, so the main incident that was featured in an ESPN documentary that aired earlier this week was a couple of players for the Portland Thorns had an issue with their coach, who eventually went on to be incredibly successful in North Carolina and got a recommendation after basically engaging in sexual relations with a couple of his players. And then, it was found out by the club. They investigated it. They fired him. But then the general manager recommended the coach to the next team he went on to coach. It was then Western New York, now North Carolina. And that led to the completely opening up of investigations into multiple teams, into abusive relationships. And the thing that was most heartbreaking was that the two players from Portland did report it to HR. HR did nothing. They then went to the league. The league did nothing. They then, after the incident had already gone several years later, they went back to the newest NWSL commissioner, who then said, if we're ever around each other at some point, maybe we can grab coffee and discuss this. Never an attempt to actually investigate the issue. Never an attempt to actually solve the environment there. And that's why I'm sort of really annoyed by how these institutions are first about protecting themselves and not actually creating safe environments.
Chris, were you born yesterday? Did you just fall off the turnip truck? No. I don't even understand what you're saying to me right now.
But I there is an example. It's an extreme one, but to me, it is sort of reminiscent of the Catholic Church and everything that happened in that environment. And ultimately, the first instinct of everyone there was to protect themselves and protect the institution and maintain the credibility of the institution.
And just ask it a separate way, Chris. Maybe we can put this into the show. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about
is every institution does this. Everybody is out to protect themselves at every step of the way. You think it doesn't happen internally in your office? Politically, when stuff's going on, you protect yourself at all costs. You think the sports leagues care when the players are being either underpaid or abused or not treated well, or not given enough money to live, or they're not flying on good enough planes?
All I'm saying is I would like them to, David. I would like them to.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I missed your point. You'd like them to.
I would like them to, yeah. And I think in the NWSL,
I don't understand why you're being so dismissive of Witty's utopian hopes. I don't
even think it's utopian. I think anyone would want to work in an environment in which, I'm not going to be sexually abused, and then the first instinct of my boss is to cover it up. And that's exactly what happened here.
But by the way, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? When is the last time? I'd like to be able to not worry about being shot or mugged. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That's
well, but I also, if the government went in and said we want to try and fix this, we want to pass gun carry laws, and we want to have background checks, I wouldn't go, well, I might get shot, so what's the point in even trying? There's always a point in trying. There's always a point, and you mentioned the NWSL players with an uprising. They have by far the bigger political favor amongst their supporters and amongst their customers. They also have an enormous amount of power because the players are bigger than the league. There have been multiple attempts at women's soccer leagues that have come and gone. The players are always massive figures. Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan and all the U.S. women's national team stars are bigger than the league. They can go play in Europe. The NWSL has to fix this problem of their institution, and the players have an enormous amount of power.
Or they'll fold.
Will they fold?
I mean, they've shown in this country several times over that professional women's soccer leagues can fold.
The abuse, the sexual relations with the players Are we drawing the line there? Do we add racism to it?
Of course.
Right? Sexism?
Yeah.
I agree. Abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. What about mental abuse? Should we add that?
Yeah.
Workplace environment.
Okay.
Stuff.
Workplace environment in general should be there. What about lack of performance?
No, not at all.
No,
not
a big deal. That's just part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I'm totally with you. The odds of that happening in any of the big leagues, do you see what it took for Robert Sarver to have to sell the Suns? It had been years and years and a botched investigation. Not botched. It was a purposeful investigation that found what it found. You think concussions are brand new in football?
This is one of those times that I think your cynicism is probably getting in the way of your message.
My message is very clear. The behavior that goes on is so inexcusable that those people should never be allowed. The players want them never to be owners. I want them to not be free.
There we go.
I'd like them to be in jail.
That's the note we're trying to strike. There we go. All right, let's hit
that's obvious. But I also want to make it clear.
I think sometimes
they're not going to jail, and they should.
Okay, there we go. I think sometimes where your cynicism gets in the way of it is like you expect the audience to follow your logic, which is that doesn't even have to be said. It doesn't have to be stated. And I think when you apply so much cynicism, maybe it does in your case because people think...
We've talked about this, Mike, and that confuses me sometimes, and it's a blind spot for me because often I'll do a show, and when you do a 45-minute show every day where there is no talk back, where you're just doing it to a camera, it tends to actually make that blind spot bigger, not smaller.
Oh, it reinforces bad habits, no doubt.
There's no question. So I believe that when I'm communicating something, that certain things don't need to be said because they should be obvious. And I appreciate when you point out that certain things do need to be said. These people, and I've talked about nothing personal, from the gymnasts, from Nasser, all the way up to hockey, to the women's soccer, to what goes on in the front offices with Danny Snyder and Mark Cuban. It is beyond reproach. The punishments are not enough. The fines are not enough. The suspensions are not enough. You should be able to work in an environment no matter what sex you are, no matter what color you are, and you should be judged on your ability to do the job, period. And that doesn't happen enough in this world, forget in sports.
All right, so we can aspire to be better. Let's take a pivot here and talk about what happened in Golden State, where two players, one a superstar, probably a future Hall of Famer, Draymond Green, gets into a physical altercation with Jordan Poole. Draymond Green, for all his new media stuff, is relying on his clutch management people to play a media game and slander Jordan Poole. I found that interesting. I generally find all of Draymond's new media stuff interesting because he's really hammering that home. And it's getting to the point where it's like, if I walk onto a basketball court and dribble a basketball, I don't say new basketball. That's not... What's with the new media? It's just media. We're all pulling the same rope here, and especially when you're going to play games like that and have your management go behind and work the actual media, maybe you shouldn't be touting new media so much if you're playing old media games, Draymond. But they get into
it's the truth though, Mike. He's telling the unvarnished truth
right.
that we don't get to because we're just dopes in the media that just report what people tell us, and what people tell us is wrong. And so we're the ones who don't know anything. They know everything.
Yeah, they know everything, and
they've got the inside.
They got the insight, and they certainly don't have agendas, and we can't do that. I'm telling you, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go to a gym and just pick up a basketball and say, new basketball here. It's arrived, and it dribbles with both hands. That's new basketball over here. How would you have handled this physical altercation between players? And maybe it's the reality of the situation. Maybe it's handled differently if it's a end of the bench player. But Jordan Poole is, according to slanderous covert operations from Clutch Sports, entered training camp with a bad attitude because he's holding out for a big contract and whatnot. How do you handle this situation between two big-time contributors?
Yeah, I don't want to give away too much of what I said on today's Nothing Personal, but I want to give some highlights that I think I'd like to hear your reaction to. The first step is that you meet with both Draymond Green and Jordan Poole separately. Then you meet with them together. Then you have a team meeting. You cannot let something like this fester. I want players policing themselves. That's number one. It is way more effective in the clubhouse, in the locker room, when there are players who are in charge. However, I got to draw the line when there's a chance of injury. Because the one thing I cannot have is players injuring themselves or each other. Just can't have it. Terrible waste. What Draymond Green was trying to say, and what he is saying, is that if we are going to be fat and happy, we're not going to be the dynasty that we believe we are and should be. And if this dynasty is going to be continuing, it's going to get new people leading the way. Jordan Poole, you are going to be leading the new type of dynasty. Here's how we do it. Here's how we prepare. Here's how we go into spring training or preseason. But there are ways to do that that don't involve fisticuffs. And I wish that Draymond, who's so into new media, who's so into using his mouth, isn't it a better lesson for people to use your mouth instead of your fists, to try to explain to him how to be better instead of knocking his socks off? I just don't understand how Draymond can say he's this great communicator and then uses his hand to communicate.
Moreover, use that microphone to advance your agenda. I mean, Eric, give me that insight. Give me that
bring him on the show.
That truth.
Why can't Jordan Poole go on the show and you call him out and say, listen, Jordan, come on the show. There are going to be a lot of listeners, and we're going to talk about what's upsetting me and what we need to do in order to be good again this year and defend our title.
But if this report came out from a traditional media source, say Ethan Strauss has a whole write-up on this altercation and the building tensions inside that Warriors locker room, it'll just get refuted and, oh, that's old traditional media and they're lying and this is where the real truth is. And it really takes a discerning public, I think. And unfortunately, I think most people understand people's agendas involved, but there is such a cult of personality around athletes and Draymond in general that he just bought so much capital with his fan base that his truth is going to be the truth. And I mean, that's not necessarily new media. That's more propaganda.
Propaganda is what everybody's done. It was way easier before social media to engage in propaganda from the team standpoint. It's what we did.
Oh, I actually think it's way easier to engage in propaganda now because you have echo chambers.
So I'm going to push back on that and say
no. I'll just mention the election and where we are with just basic facts. I think it's so much easier now to weaponize social media and propagandize. It is so much now that shame is out the window. It is so much easier to propagandize.
But that's just preaching to the choir, right? There's fact checking that goes on. So
not if you don't give a shit about the facts. Boom.
No, everybody cares about the facts when the facts are what you want them to be and not being displayed that way.
Well, all right. Let's take an example. Herschel Walker, who claimed that everything was a lie. He didn't even know his accuser, and the facts come out that the accuser is actually a mother to one of his children. Mm-hmm. That would seem to poke holes in that, but they're holding the line, and this is all just a big takeout from the left, and they'll stoop to anything to make sure that we don't win this seat. Everything's a lie.
Well, the woman came out and said it. I forgot her name, Dana somebody, who just said, listen, I don't care what Herschel Walker does or doesn't do. I don't care his position if he wants to kill baby eagles or kill babies or whatever he wants to do. I don't want to lose control of the Senate, right? I want control of the Senate. We have to get a Republican in that seat. And I give her credit for honesty. When you put Herschel Walker as a Senate candidate, which is it's beyond comprehension. That, to me, is the bigger issue, not being red or blue. It's not having your best people represent you. And that's our biggest problem. That's who it was, Jeremy. Right, it was Dana Loesch. For me, it is just shocking that we have candidates like Herschel Walker running. It's embarrassing. We saw it in Florida so often when I was down there, the kind of people who run. I just don't get it. You people don't realize the power these politicians have. And nobody wants to run who's smart because they know that they're going to get examined and the skeletons in the closet and all the bad stuff. They're going to have to go around raising money like Francis Suarez running around raising money all the time. And you're not really governing. So the smartest people don't want to be a part of it. And that's the most depressing part.
I think when you look at the political spectrum right now, I don't think the left really has an answer for the shamelessness that some on the right do. The Herschel
they don't
Walker
want to play the game.
No, well, it's
also antithetical to their political platform and their sort of like their whole idea of governance, right? They actually care about this stuff,
right? But the right will just double down. It's political ad season, and it's infuriating. Everything is radical left and want to defund the police. I saw an attack ad that says this one candidate doesn't care about the police, wants to defund it, and then I see the other candidate's ad, and she's actually a cop.
Yeah.
So, like, it's
that's Val Demings here in Florida.
Yeah.
He's running against Marco Rubio.
I mean, Herschel Walker fits an archetype of where have we seen celebrity that isn't governed by shame running for office? All right, so it literally reached the highest levels in this country. And now you have Herschel Walker and you have Dr. Oz, and anything that is investigated and backed up by eyewitness accounts from victims in some cases, it doesn't matter. It's all a lie. Go Team Red.
It's all politically motivated.
And it's just the dumbest. It's the dumbest thing on the planet right now. And it has been cemented by things like social media because people just want to hear their own beliefs reinforced.
All I ask is that people are educated, and we're doing a project with Nothing Personal, hiring someone where there's going to be a database that you can go to see who's running, where you are, how you register to vote, learn where the campaign contributions are coming from. My whole point has been from the beginning through this craziness that's happened, not just over the last 6 years, it's been going on for a long time. I just want people to know who they're voting for. And once the people speak, the people speak. I can't argue against if you are on the right or on the left. That is totally your choice. But at least know what you're choosing. And that is something that has gone away. And you'd think with social media, it would be easier to understand who you're voting for. But the voter turnout rates are pathetically low. The knowledge that people have about real issues that actually impact them is pathetically low, and people are more interested in who's fathering who, which child's a bastard, who abused who, what, when, where, who's having the affair, who's got the biggest social media following. It's insane to me. It's as though these people don't get it. Trump said something interesting, love him or hate him. He said at one point, and I think it was Trump, or maybe it was Michael Douglas playing the American president. It was one of the two, I can't remember who, said that people will need to drink water. I think it was the American president. When they're thirsty, they'll go through sand and they'll drink the sand because you told them it was water. That may not have been Trump. That may have been American president.
That was American president.
I would not compare those two figures.
You had me, though, with how you symboled through it. I was like, is this Trump?
And that was a Democrat, by the way.
That was a Democrat. And it's pretty prescient, isn't it? That all these years later, that really what politicians are doing is they are somehow making people believe that they are getting what they want. And those people don't even understand what they're getting. It is such a sad display of current governance.
Rob Reiner.
David, if I may get back to how we got here, the Draymond issue, you mentioned how you're okay with locker rooms policing themselves. I think Draymond Green has a ton of latitude as sort of the minister of culture with the Golden State Warriors and having set the foundation for that team for a decade now. But it has also become fairly clear that he can have it go a bit too far. And you can make an argument that maybe he ran off Kevin Durant. You can make an argument that he probably has a temper that goes too far and yells at people.
What are you talking about? They did a podcast together. That was all made up.
Right, exactly.
There was no tension between the two. He didn't run anybody
New media.
off. It was media. That was old media.
Draymond gets ejected from playoff games, right?
Right.
Very old media attitudes going on right now.
He's picks up technical points and all that. Is there a point at which that goes too far, where the players policing themselves goes too far? Because I feel like Draymond Green has sort of had the latitude to do whatever it is that he wishes in that organization, and I wonder if he's almost accrued too much power to sort of, hey Jordan Poole, stay in your lane, know your role. Just because you're about to get a big extension, calm down. I'm in charge here. Like I've always wondered how an organization would handle a character who also seems to be motivated by that. He's motivated by holding cultures intact and being aggressive and overly and overstepping the bounds.
It's
and
good for his brand.
I would say probably having anger issues at times.
Owners and presidents and GMs are Frankenstein. And we spend our days creating monsters all day. And we then are surprised when the monsters want to eat us and everything in their way. Draymond Green was created by the Golden State Warriors. And now they want to come out and say, hey, just don't punch anyone, but keep leading the clubhouse. There are examples and examples of players whose heads have gotten so large because we never say no. They're able to get anything they want. They're able to have exceptions made. It's why we've talked about, do you treat superstars differently than other players? And often you have to. You have no choice. Skipper and I talked about that on a recent show. The problem is when it goes too far, there's nothing you can do. When I've lost Christian Yelich because we created him and he's now a monster, what do? Do I try to take it back? It doesn't work. You cannot de-monster a monster without putting him down. And the way you put him down is through trade or release. And Draymond Green is not a trade or release candidate no matter what he does, because at the end of the day, they want to win. And you have a better chance of winning in basketball with Draymond Green than without. When it comes to a player like Yelich, Derek Jeter said, you don't want to be here. You're a monster that was created by the previous regime. We'll get rid of you because we think we'll be better without you. And clearly that was not the case.
There's a lot of stories I wish I had time to get into with David Samson, but Witty and I are going to geek out over local soccer for a couple of minutes to wrap up this local hour. So if you want to hear David's takes on stuff like LeBron James and owning a Vegas team, or what's going on in MLB, make sure to check out Nothing Personal with David Samson. Every week, David reviews a TV show, a documentary, a movie, whatever his heart desires. What is your review for this week?
I watched a movie called Emily the Criminal, and I don't know whether you guys have spoken about it before.
Ooh,
I admit I have not.
Is that the Aubrey Plaza movie?
I've heard that Aubrey Plaza is having a moment.
She is having a moment.
Is this a thing, Aubrey having a moment?
You know who she reminds me of? She reminds me of Billy a little bit.
Allison used to say that.
That Aubrey's having a moment?
No, that Aubrey reminds her of Billy.
Aubrey of Billy Gill?
Billy Gill, yeah.
Yeah. And when she said that, I'm like, I can't go for that. No can do.
No. I can't go for that.
Wait, you're a Hall & Oates fan?
Are you wearing a Hall & Oates shirt?
I've known you for
I've known you for 10 years. Duos, they're number one.
I've known you for 10 years, and not once have you mentioned Hall & Oates.
I listen to Hall & Oates almost every day.
They're
on every playlist I have. My run playlist, my relax playlist, my sleep playlist, my flight playlist, every one. I believe, and you can check this, and I think it's still true, they're the top-selling duo of all time.
Let's get to your review before I go further down the rabbit hole.
Okay, Emily the Criminal. Aubrey Plaza, if you've not heard of her, has been in some movies that are not well seen, like Safety Not Guaranteed, which are simply phenomenal. Black Bear, just movies that she's good. This time, she produces a movie that is pretty outside of the zone in terms of what happens to this person who starts off as a person who needs money and then ends up being a criminal. So that seems like an old story, right? But the way Aubrey Plaza plays it, the camera is always up close and personal with her. You are engaged with her in a very intimate way. It's not a sexual way. It's an intimate way where you are seeing what's in her brain. Like, I feel like you're seeing the cranks, like the movie Inside Out. You're seeing the decisions that are being made. You're seeing how you go down the rabbit hole into criminality and what happens. And it is a staggering performance. Probably her best performance of the career, a movie that could get attention come Oscar time. I don't know that she'll get nominated because there's so many great performances for women this year, but what I will say is it is worth your time.
Would you say
Emily the Criminal?
Would you say that Aubrey Plaza is indeed having a moment?
No.
Whoa,
having a moment
what?
I'll tell you why. Having a moment to me, and maybe I'm just not doing the bit with you, having a moment is, hey, this is like she hasn't been anything and now she's something and she won't be something soon, so this is a moment. Is that what you mean by a moment?
I think, yeah, like Steve Carell was always something, but then he had a moment and he became something bigger. And I think that's what's happening with Aubrey.
Way.
Yeah, Steve Carell's a big star, I think.
Steve Carell is one of the biggest. Are
Yeah.
you watching The Patient right now?
I want to, but I haven't gotten around to it.
He's showing his range. He's showing his range. The reason Aubrey Plaza is not having a moment is because, remember Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates?
Yeah, she was in it.
When you can do that and Emily the Criminal, it's not a moment. That's called a career. Aubrey Plaza is having a career, not a moment.
Wow, we got down to the bottom of it. Thank you so much, David. We'll talk to you next week.
Stugotz is coming swaggering because he says we have a weekend, Dan. I don't know what it means. I think just, what are you talking about? A lot of sports on television? Or?
We have a weekend. We have Dolphins and Jets. We have great NFL games. We have de facto college football playoff games. Major League Baseball playoff games start on Friday. 4 games on Friday. The soccer playoffs. What?
Decision day on Sunday.
Oh, massive.
Oh, great job by by MLS to put their most important day of the season right up against the 1 o'clock kickoffs in the NFL. Just a stroke of genius on their part.
Against the witching hour.
I don't ever understand the MLS broadcasting strategy, but guys, I want to talk about Inter Miami some because we don't talk a lot of Inter Miami on this show, even though I'm a season ticket holder. Chris Whittingham is a broadcaster for the team. Anytime we've talked about Inter Miami, it's either been stadium talk or just laughing at what's been a pretty relatively embarrassing launch for what was supposed to be a glamour franchise with David Beckham.
Not a lot of positives, not a lot of reasons to talk about the fledgling franchise that came with Beckham and Sparkles and everything else. There's been very little positive we've been able to say since Beckham came into town.
And this season, it was looking like more of the same. More struggles out the gate. You wondered if they hired the right manager. You certainly wondered if they made the right signings. And then something happened. Gonzalo Higuaín lost about 30 pounds.
You've been making fun of him, and that name is magical. You've been making fun of that guy who's got my father's name, Gonzalo, and how fat he was and washed and out of shape, and now he's great.
Witty,
Incredible.
Witty, correct me if I'm wrong. He had an actual quote was, I just approach this league like I could just stroll in and play with a cigarette in my mouth.
Yeah.
And it showed last year. It showed. He was booed by his home fans.
My kind of guy.
He was booed by his home fans. He looked slow. He looked out of shape. And it was widely expected that this would be his final season under contract, and you were just dying to get him off the books. And now, in a few short months, he's gone from a laughingstock to certifiably the greatest player in this franchise's history.
Oh, my God.
Someone that is having a sold-out stadium sing his name.
You're telling me that a guy, a faded legend, you're telling me I have only checked in with this person to mock that he's a roly-poly washed version of himself who once was great but came to play the last year here the way that a bunch of old guys used to play for the Cosmos in the 70s.
Their history is 3 seasons. I mean,
This guy, but Mike Ryan has done nothing but use that name as a punchline for a couple of years now.
He spat that name, and it was for 2 full calendar years. He arrived in the summer of 2020, and until about June of this year, he has mostly been a player that the fans have not been a fan of. And all of a sudden, now, last night, the coach basically came out and said that Gonzalo Higuaín decided to retire midway through the season, around the time that he was struggling the most. And from that moment, he's like, all right, F it. Let's make this fun. And all of a sudden, in the last 15 games, he has scored 14 goals for Inter Miami.
Wow.
2 more in a 4-1 victory over Orlando City, their in-state rivals last night, to secure a playoff place. They're a win and a loss from another team away from hosting a playoff game, which would have been unthinkable when they took 1 point from their first 5 games of the
rival,
season.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Orlando.
Oh,
no,
Orlando City.
There was
There's
fuck
some-
Orlando chants last night in
Wow.
that packed house, and it was. I gotta say, it's pretty emotional as a season ticket holder. From the very first moment I could actually get those season tickets, especially earlier this season, there were some sad games to attend. It was not a good vibe, and to see.
And they betrayed you a little bit by playing the games. You thought you were going to get a Miami experience, and next thing you know, you're deep in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, well,
following.
the games were that the pandemic happened and the stadium pursuit of something closer to Miami has taken a lot longer than we all had anticipated, but all would have been forgiven. I love soccer. I am the key demo for this franchise, and yet they were doing everything that they could to shake me off the branch, but I held on. And last night, to see a packed stadium on a Wednesday night against, yes, I know it's a laughable thing for me to say, but an in-state rival, their fiercest rival in soccer that matters, to clinch a traditional playoff spot because they made the playoffs in the first year, but that was
It was a
expanded-
play-in. It was an expanded field because of COVID. It was ridiculous.
For this team to have this turnaround with the very same guys that people would point at the TV and yell at, the manager, the personnel, Gonzalo Higuaín, for all of them to turn it around this majestically and be entering into the playoffs. We'll see exactly what position. That'll get sorted on decision day, but you won't watch it because Jets Dolphins.
D-Day.
Yeah. To enter the playoffs, arguably in the best form of the conference in a league that really anybody can win it. It's
Yeah.
it's arguably as random as Major League
Oh, wait a
Baseball
minute. Now
is.
you've
No,
got
it's-
Stugotz's
really,
now
it-
you've
it's
got
the- it's the most
Stugotz's
ran- it's the
attention.
most
Hold
random
on.
sport in the country.
Now you
It's
got
up for grabs.
Stugotz's attention has been gotten here. What do you mean? Everyone's in the mix?
It's totally up for grabs. Go ahead and try to tell me with conviction that a certain MLS team is going to win the MLS Cup.
You're going to tell me that you're going to tell me that from where we stand now, you've been betrayed a number of times, you get emotional with these teams, you get unreasonable. There's the possibility that after you've been doing nothing but making fun of Gonzalo Higuaín, and just the name is so beautiful, as a fat guy who is just microwaving the last part of his career, you're telling me there's a chance that he all of a sudden becomes Erling Haaland and is scoring goals all over the place.
Ooh.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say is we understand that this is a niche sport, and it's not. I'm not even talking about soccer. I'm talking about MLS soccer. Because I think if we talk about clubs like Chelsea and Manchester United and Real Madrid, more people in our audience know what's going on there than what's going on in the domestic league here. We've been very cognizant of that. I'm not force-feeding you Inter Miami talk. The last time we talked about this team was half a year ago.
You're
and they were a
force-feeding them
laughing stock.
Cesta Cyclone talk.
Yeah,
And-
well,
and
that's a really good team.
That's another champion.
That's a really
We've got
good
in
team.
South Florida.
Hey, have you been supporting the Cyclones on ESPN Plus? You can follow our Cessa Cyclones all year long on ESPN Plus in dazzling 720p.
I canceled my ESPN Plus subscription.
You did?
And
Oh, you are not gambling again if you're
I'm
doing
using
that.
Whittingham's. I mean,
But on ESPN Plus nationally, if you want to follow Inter Miami, oftentimes you'll hear Chris Whittingham on that call. And this is, I really hope, this is the opportunity that this franchise has always wanted to captivate a local sports crowd.
Let's
I don't
get
think it can
behind
do
the team. Whittingham. Whittingham's an announcer for this team. Whittingham has been calling shitty soccer for a long time in this market. In closets at Imagina, like just guerrilla warfare soccer broadcasting. He's been keeping the sport alive through the wires of Hialeah. Just where have you been broadcasting from? Closets,
from everywhere, from warehouses in Dania Beach to closets in Medley.
Phil Shane used to have this turf, but now it's yours. Is there anyone else?
Phil Shane's still on the Imagina turf.
he's still doing it?
He's still out there doing
still-
it. Calling
it's
Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, it's still soccer. And I appreciate what Dan is doing, speaking for a large chunk of the audience. You're doing the writers stuff. But if you allow Witty and I 2 minutes to fully geek out on tactics and how this turnaround came to be. Because we know Gonzalo Higuaín lost about 30 pounds.
Yeah.
He's not the most fleet of foot, but he has found his goal-scoring form. But for me, the real revelation is what they've done defensively. From going to these games, their shape at times was unrecognizable. They were just an amorphous blob out there. Now they seem organized. That back four, led by DeAndre Yedlin, who's having a great year for this team. Higuaín's a team MVP with what he's done. But Yedlin, supreme leadership, and what they found with their center back tandem, I think, has been a real revelation this season.
And Inter Miami had to do all of this despite the fact they had an arm time behind their back because they're currently under sanctions from Major League Soccer for penalties involving a transfer. And so with $1.5 million less than the rest of the league, they had to build this team on a budget. They have a college draft pick at center back next to a journeyman who was last playing in Egypt. And so defensively, they've been sensational. They've won their last 4 games. And in terms of capturing the hearts and minds of South Florida, last night it was sort of a classic Inter Miami scenario. In the first 2.5 years of this club, they play big games. The first time they open up the doors to the stadium, they lose. The first big home game where they had full capacity, they lost. There was sort of a set you up and disappoint really for a long time. And last night, Mike and myself were both kind of ready for that again. They were without 2 key players, and it was a huge game, win and you're in against Orlando, in-state rivals, packed house, Wednesday night. We were all excited for it, and we thought they were going to lose again. And then they scored 38 seconds in, they won 4-1, and they actually sent a bunch of people home happy. And that's the thing that I've been disappointed by, is every time it's like, big moment, send the fans home happy. They haven't. And they were absolutely fired up. It was a great crowd, great excitement.
Why are you smiling so much?
He's so happy. They're so happy. I'm happy for them.
I mean, we care-
We got a weekend. I mean,
we care deeply about this thing.
And we want to bring people along. We want to bring people out to the games. And they've actually been very good at home this year. They've won 10 out of their last 13 at home.
I will say that this is the craziest season ticket holder experience I've ever had, because the flair for the dramatic that this team has in particular, there have been about 5 games that have been decided in the final minutes. Indiana Vasiliev is a player that especially has a flair for the dramatic. It's been really fun, and to see the team actually build and improve and come together over the course of the year, be resilient, and really in the face of adversity, in the face of a lot of people laughing, in the face of what was really embarrassing sanctions, arguably stemming from the worst signing in MLS history. They have turned this thing around and now potentially enter the MLS playoffs in the best form in the conference, in a sport that anything can happen in the postseason.
Could be playing at home.
They could be having a home playoff game.
It seems like they're gelling at the right time.
That is incredibly cliched analysis,
but accurate
from Stugotz.
Analysis as well.
What the crowd? Tell me this, okay? Because I have
Here for you.
I have long desired. I mean, this town has tried to make soccer work a number of different times. I was just asking Whittingham yesterday about Thomas Rongen because he was on one of the channels here, and I'm like, he's a former striker, played in the 70s. Fort Lauderdale Strikers tried to make soccer work here a long time ago, and as we're terrible at March Madness and terrible at a lot of American sports in South Florida, we're good at this one. We consistently rally around, if you place it someplace, you get a lot of different factions who love this game. And so is it a crowd that is filled with flavor? Is it a crowd that is not? Because we've got, our sports fans are kind of segregated here. The Panthers are off in Sawgrass, and that's a distinctly white experience. Is this something that is Dade County going to Broward County and making it feel a bit Latin?
Massively. I don't think that there is a more Latin club in Major League Soccer by a long. Maybe I think LAFC deserve a lot of credit for that. They have a tremendous supporters base, and there's a lot of Mexican influence, obviously, given the community that they reside in. But yeah, the supporters section. First off, there was not an empty seat in that stand last night. They're playing drums. They've got music going the entire time. They're leading chants in Spanish for the full 90 minutes. Flares going off. It's a South American atmosphere in that end of the ground. They're always there no matter what. Actually, their coolest moments are during lightning delays when they basically put on a concert underneath their stand during the entire delay. And you're absolutely right. It is Miami coming north. I can't wait for when Miami actually plays in Miami when they're building that stadium by the airport, because they'll be able to tap into that even more. But one of the best atmospheres in the league.
I've gone to their practices. They live this. It's year-round in Doral. You have a bunch of South Americans traveling up there. It's a hike. I mean, this stadium is far closer to Boca. It's 15 minutes away from the heart of Boca. And yet, fuck Orlando was the first English chant that I've heard from the supporters section all year long. In fact, last night, I don't know if this is a Hispanic Heritage Month thing, but all the in-stadium announcements were in Spanish. It is a distinctly Latin flavor if you can get past them playing Gloria Estefan so much.
And you keep saying the writer makes an appearance here, but you and Whittingham care about this sport uniquely. You've dedicated portions not of just your emotional fandom in this. You've dedicated time and energy and resources into becoming soccer voices. Like Whittingham has no more successful place that he exists than on soccer broadcasts.
We've certainly cut our teeth nationally, internationally, and in Europe with Chelsea Football Club. But this, nationally, most people still look at Inter Miami as a relatively new club. But this is a story that's been a decade long. And they've, every corner, they just run into a big fat L. Whether it be getting this franchise off the ground.
They never win.
They never win in all facets of it.
Mel Reese was a win. For Mel Reese getting...
We'll see. And I'm still, because I have PTSD, I'm still not super hopeful. Like, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly with this franchise. But for one magical Wednesday night next to Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport, there was a packed house that was not let down by this franchise and was singing Gonzalo Higuaín's name at the top of their lungs, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Do it in the postseason.
Andrew Luck. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
First seed gets a bye.
You're saying no series?
No series.
Single elimination all the way through?
All the way through.
One game?
One game.
I love that.
So it used to be home and away in the playoffs, or you played there was a series, a 2-game series, and then they added the score and
home and home.
Yeah, home and home.
Yeah,
and they changed to single elimination. So first seed in each conference gets a bye, and then 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5.
The team with the most points at the end of the season, in this case LAFC, gets a trophy, like in Europe, but
like hockey.
But like the President's Cup, although it should matter more, and they do get like a Champions League spot for doing it, but it's so American that we need playoffs to determine who the best team is. So often that team that goes in that's had the best season is subject to a 1-game sample. And the game of soccer, you can all it takes is one counterattack or one player dragging their foot in the box, and your season is nuked. And history remembers a champion, very rarely remembers the Supporter Shield winner.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate history of the league. And last year, Miami, if they were able to get the home playoff game, they would go in as a 4 seed. Last year, the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference won the whole thing. So that's just how this thing can go.
But it says the Red Bulls are the 4 seed here.
Yeah, but
correct. So if they lose or draw on Sunday and Miami win, then Miami would go above them on the tiebreaker. Also, I think you would enjoy this. The first tiebreaker in MLS is wins, not goal differential. It's just did you win more than the other team.
I love that. Finally, a league getting it right. I mean, prioritizing what's important, which is winning. Yes.
They're gonna get the Sunday 1:00 slot for their playoff game. Exit.
That happened to the WNBA too, where they had their championship decided on an NFL.
Witty's explained it to me. It's that these network partners want those windows.
Well, I mean, the biggest reason why they should do this on Saturday, but their league partners are ESPN and Fox, and they're loaded with college football all day, so there's literally nowhere to put that in the schedule.
I would alter the schedule to Mondays and Tuesdays. Like it's so fucking weird.
I think Friday night would be one to own, but I mean that's not a great television night. It all changes. I mean, they're going to Apple, and I presume Apple's going to do everything on Saturdays.
Well, so. Apple's making like the Wednesday games. Like there's a load more. Load more of like Wednesday games.
So from my understanding of it, it's going to be like 28 Saturdays and 6 Sundays and 6 Wednesdays. Okay. That's the schedule.
All right. Well, because I in talking to the Cooligans, like they were shifting their recording schedule because MLS Spotlight on Apple was shifting a day.
I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll see when the schedule comes out.
Mike, if you get a home game, are you going soccer right to the Canes-Carolina game?
Well, the Canes-Carolina game is just Saturday. The playoff, like the final regular season
till
game.
next week.
I sold my Sunday tickets.
Right.
I'm not going to watch Inter Miami during the NFL. Like, that's absurd to me. Luckily, it's one of the Montreal, for whatever reason, I guess the Snowbirds. It's the only team that I can ever sell my tickets to.
Oh, the Snowbirds. That's a good shout.
Yeah, but
Montreal's really good too.
Yeah, I'm worried about the playoffs for sure next week. No, next week the Canes are on the road, so that's not so much of an issue. But I am in Tampa for a concert.
Right.
If they open up on the road too, I'd probably go to wherever that game is. It just, I mean, a flight to New York is about as long as the drive up to Drive Pink Stadium is for me. Anyway, so. I wish I were kidding.
You're at Virginia Tech the next weekend.
Yeah.
You don't care about that.
No, Virginia. If they got to smash Virginia Tech.
Yeah. So the time windows are Saturday at noon or 3, Sunday at 3 or 8, and then Monday night.
Give me Monday night.
But you are worried about Carolina.
I'm worried about. I mean, we lost Middle Tennessee State. I'm worried in general
about everyone.
Yeah. Right. In general.
All right. So in terms of show, let's do 20 minutes here that will pair with Becky Hammon.
I actually had a predicament when it came to the UNC game.
What's that?
I got invited to the game by John Skipper, who obviously has important seats. I don't necessarily have to dictate. They have to be pretty good. My seats are very good for these games, but like how I experience University of Miami games.
Right.
It's probably not safe for the audience that John Skipper is hanging around.
Right.
So I wanted to say no, honestly, because I think I would enjoy it a little less, but it's a great opportunity to hang out with John. And also I kind of needed to play his shell game for reasons I'm not ready to admit on the air with some tickets. And I needed to help some folks out.
A shell game, a ticket shell game.
I love a shell game.
That is not surprising in any way. Put it on the poll, please, Whittingham, at LeBatardShow. Are you surprised in any way that Stugotz loves a good shell game? You corrected me, Mike, because you are very zealous about protecting your soccer things on the pronunciation of a man I called Erling Haaland, because I am not pronouncing it.
Turn him into Kevin Harland.
Yes, I have not pronounced it correctly, but I was curious as I see all of a sudden this unusual looking man who feels a bit Nordic, and I'm being told that he's the greatest goal scorer anyone's ever seen, that he's on a striker streak of goal scoring, and I don't know anything about him. I'm hearing his name for the first time and not pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, he just moved from a club in Germany to Manchester City, so he's playing at the highest level of the Premier League. Mike is patting himself on the back because when he first emerged, I think in Salzburg, and then when he moved to Dortmund, he's broken records at every step of the way. He's on more than a goal per game. If you compare his numbers to where Messi and Ronaldo at this time in their careers, he is flying past them. Yeah. This is the greatest goal scorer in the world right now. He's already got 14 Premier League goals in 8 games, which is unheard of.
But what is he physically? Because
he's 6'4", blonde. You mentioned he's from Norway, which makes sense. He has this incredibly domineering and physical presence. Is somehow faster than everyone on the field with his first step.
His body control too is like at that size. Really, only like Zlatan has that kind of body control.
Quick steps, incredible leaping ability. Once scored a goal by leaping into the air and flying. Basically, he was completely parallel to the ground, and with his left boot poked it in. It was like he scores every kind of ridiculous goal. This guy, playing in Manchester City as well, is going to score a ludicrous number of goals. He's going to be considered the best player in the world very soon.
Okay, so but when I think of Harry Kane or when Ronaldo or Zlatan, I'm thinking about thick, sturdy body types. This isn't Messi, who's also thick but is tiny.
This guy is sleek.
This person.
No, he's a big guy too. Don't get it twisted. That soccer players are a little bit thinner because of all the cardio that they do, but this guy's built out. He's an Adonis.
But is he physically better than everyone? Like, is he stronger than the people who are around him beyond just being able? Are you talking about, because that's what Zlatan is, right? Zlatan is, it seems like at a body type, he's not supposed to be able to run as fast as everyone else.
Right. I think Zlatan is a good comp for this player, even though I project him to be better than Zlatan ever was, which is certainly high praise. Is Zlatan could beat you with power or agility, speed. He could run around you or go through you. And Haaland is very similar. He's great in the air. There isn't really a flaw in his game. And if you saw him burst onto the scene with his international side, Norway, I think there was a game, the first time I heard about him, there was a game he scored 7 goals.
Yeah, I believe Norway, they beat, there was at youth level, they were the under-20s. I think he scored 7 goals in an 11-0 win over Honduras.
And that's when I was like, who the hell is this guy? And I became fascinated by him, and he's done the climb. Red Bull Salzburg, Borussia Dortmund, and now with a glamour side in Manchester City, top of the table, and he's the one doing the big things in these spotlight games. 2 years ago, I was pretty certain that this guy was destined to be called the best in the world. I think you can make that. I think you can make that claim right now, based on form.
Yeah.
Based on form, he is the best player in the world. He's appointment television. Dan pointed out like how odd he looks compared to he's this big Scandinavian guy, and I think that actually plays into the brand because it's a bit of a novelty to see someone that looks like this doing these things. He is a star. He is a superstar, and he is a joy to watch. In the ways that Messi was a joy to watch, in the ways that Ronaldo and his goal-scoring prowess was a joy to watch, the way that Erling Haaland plays specifically with this Manchester City team that plays such an appealing brand of soccer, it's something that you have to go out of your way to see.
Stugotz, as you see some of our legends aging, some of the best guys in sports, and you see how science and training changes their bodies, and I don't know, did you hear LeBron talking about in basketball Wembanyama? The 18-year-old kid we were talking about.
He said he's going to be a generational player.
Well, and just says, look, this is beyond unicorn. This is an alien. This is a physical alien. I don't understand how this person can have skills that are legitimate basketball skills at 7'4" or 5", still growing and longer than anyone you've ever seen. But I wanted to ask you, as you watch LeBron telling the commissioner, hey, go fetch me a team in a press conference, saying, I'm watching you. You're in Abu Dhabi now, but I need you to, can you get me a team? In his press conference, LeBron is making the play for whatever retirement looks like in the age of the athletes will own their brands, and Tom Brady might have his marriage cost because of what's happening with he needs to get to whatever his brand is for the next 10 years. Because these guys, they saw what happened with Jordan, the Last Dance, Jeter got in the game, Magic got in the game. They're all looking at like, how can I make the next part of my career? LeBron's not going to stop competing.
No, not at all.
And he just you saw how that press conference went, correct? Where
he said, I want a team in Las Vegas. He was telling the commissioner, get me a team in Las Vegas. And he should have a team in Las Vegas if LeBron wants one.
But the thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about, because I don't know where this gets old for you guys. I don't want to be talking about Brady all the time and his marital difficulties. But Shakespearean, which do you want? Love or Fountain of Youth and Money Forever? Like, there are elements here that I don't want to go down the path of anything other than, my God, what a tapestry here, where he is Tom Brady, Stugotz, and might be the one who gets alimony here. He's Tom Brady and might be the only quarterback in the league, Stugotz. Only quarterback in the league whose wife makes more than he does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at the center of her choosing, if they're getting divorced and the reports are true, it's an amazing detonation what happened around the Dolphins. And as men do the dance, Billy called it sad to have your family destroyed over a Fountain of Youth and $375 million. And he's not wrong.
It is sad.
Billy's not wrong,
Yes.
but most people listening to this would say, give me a Fountain of Youth and $375 million. I don't know if it's most, but a lot of them.
I think a lot of people would also settle for 7 Super Bowls, being married to a supermodel who's very successful, having a great family, and they'd say, hey, you know what? Enough's enough. I'm going to go hang out with the family because that's what I promised my family.
This is so fascinating to me, considering how much conviction you guys are speaking on what happened to their marriage. It's amazing to me how this narrative has become the truth. Tom Brady chose football over his marriage. You don't know what the hell happened. You don't know what went wrong there. Why are people speaking on this as if it were fact that Tom Brady's decision to come back to football nuked his marriage? Let me tell you something. That ultimately is incredible for Tom Brady's brand. If your marriage is going to fall apart with a supermodel, let it be because I love the game too much. The certainty that people are speaking, the authority that they are attaching to their takes on Tom Brady's marriage is bewildering.
It's because it's not about Tom Brady and Giselle. It's about all of it. Celebrity, marital culture, paparazzi, what we're entitled to, best in sports. They're symbols. They might as well not even be human. They're brands. They're brands and they're married, and now we are dining. How many gossip stories are still carrying page 6? Tell me how many gossip stories.
Well, that is page 6, all of it.
But if it's Harry and Markle, and this one,
Right.
this is they might as well be our royal couple, Mike. So it's not about it.
Well, the Kardashians are our royal family.
Mike is right about that.
Okay, but
Yeah,
the Kardashians might be the symbol for the modern age, but these two are the symbols for actual success that none of us would dispute has been earned.
There's no real reporting being done on what happened to their marriage. Everyone's just attaching, well, he came back, and we knew that Giselle, from her own comments, didn't want him playing football.
But Mike, what led to these conclusions and this discussion?
You want to believe that. It could be the way that he sips soup. You have no idea. But everyone is speaking as if they know what happened here. It's just, he appeared. If you go back to the history of the most handsome goddamn quarterback we've ever seen, and you look at what's in his past and how he even got to Giselle, no one's actually making that logic leap. It's all because he loves playing for the Bucs so much. And I just find it fascinating that every sports show in America right now, it's just he chose the game over love. Wow. No rebuttals? Like, that's what it is? Cool. If I go out, if my marriage flames out, please let it be because I cared about my profession too much in terms of narrative. Please let it be that, because that is so self-serving. I love it.
But wait, I gave a rebuttal a couple of days ago. You got mad at me. I said enough is enough.
Well,
You've
that's a
won
trick.
enough.
That's
Right.
a trick because
Yes,
I can't come
good.
out here and be
boy.
skeptical and actually like rumor monger about all that. It's just, it's certain. He picked football.
I mean, we're also going off of public comments that both parties in this have made. In particular, Gisele Bündchen in her interviews has talked about these very issues of Tom Brady being too busy at work and wanting to get back to her work and all of this stuff. Like, she's given voice to things that would be breaks in their relationship, and we're going off of that information. Now, could there be way more beyond that? Absolutely. But I think our conversation is being informed by what she has said.
But to Mike's point, okay, marriages are complicated, relationships are complicated, and we cannot from here have any idea of much of anything because Tom Brady. You
We
have to
agree it's not soup, though, right?
I don't know.
I mean,
it might
could be soup.
It could be soup.
My marriage
Hot.
almost ended over a sock once.
Really?
Yeah. Why do these socks keep going missing? What is it? I put 2 socks next to each other in the hamper. One goes out of the dryer.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I have a drawer that is 17 pairs of socks. I'm missing the other pair.
The
It's
missing
just
sock.
where is the missing sock?
Yeah.
How does this keep happening to me? A marriage can dissolve.
It could be socks or soup. We don't know.
Do you slurp or sip your soup?
I'm a bit of a slurper. I'm
Me
a bit of a
too,
caveman.
yeah.
But in this vein, though, Stugotz, this is where I want to thank you for leading me here because I will tell you that in marriage, I have learned what an idiot I used to be in many realms where no one has corrected me on the things like slurping soup in front of, a table of 10 because I'm a giant baby. And I needed to be shown my blind spots by love. And I can tell you over the last 5 years or so of amazing learning that I've done that Mike is absolutely right, that it is not fair to go prying around in the lives of these people. However, because what surrounds them is so Shakespearean and they are just vessels, it doesn't even matter. In some ways, they're not even human beings. They don't age. They don't age. They're not of this planet. They are symbols for success and beauty in this country and excellence that has no parallel, like maybe in the Williams family. But this doesn't exist, this amount of success where you could say Tom Brady, greatest winner ever, but not primary breadwinner in his family. Somehow that she is worth more than him in another business where it's hard to age and where youth is not forever. Those parts of it, Mike. Once you read the reports, they've gotten divorce lawyers, and you have to wonder to yourself, well, Brady is going to get alimony. Brady.
We did this. Tony said off the air that we kind of had this discourse about Beyonce and Jay-Z when she made an album, arguably her greatest piece of art, surrounding their marriage troubles. And she's certainly the primary breadwinner in that. And Jay-Z's not just a businessman, he's a business man.
Solange in the elevator, there was stuff there, right? All of a sudden now everybody's happy. Another album comes out. Hey,
but as Stugotz, I've been railing against Stugotz because I think it's a good mirror to hold up to me because I don't know, and I should say again and again that I do not know, obviously, what is going on in their marriage. And we'll say again that I don't know how fair it is to the kids in that family, for all of us, for it to be a subject of fodder on television. Must be unpleasant. But to Stugotz's argument that the sports fan and the paparazzi and all the people who made celebrity what it is today so the Kardashians can be multi-billion-dollar brands in the family because they were out ahead on social influence.
Way ahead. Yeah.
From that perspective of business building and where we are, don't you think that the audience, Stugotz, because you're someone who feels entitled at every point to, I'm allowed to heckle, I'm allowed to be a sports fan who, give me my news, give me the invasions of privacy, give me everything, I'm entitled to it, you're a famous person, you're no longer a human being. But these details and these crumbs are irresistible. They're irresistible to the gossip machine. They're irresistible to the sports machine. And they're irresistible to anybody interested in a story of how complicated marriage can be and how it works and how do you stay together and how do you find happiness and how do you connect with someone as a teammate, forever successful after you've raised kids and you look at each other and you don't have that much in common anymore because the kids were where you spent your time.
Are the fans entitled to speculate, entitled to eat this story up? Of course they are. I mean, these are public figures, both of them. And this is the second greatest athlete we've ever seen behind Michael Jordan.
Are they eating it up, though, or are people tired of me talking about Brady in any form as if football revolves around Brady, which it does?
I think people listening to this show and across America are doing exactly what we're doing. They don't have all the facts, but it's not going to stop them from speculating on what's going on inside of that relationship.
Is it wrong to speculate?
Probably. I don't feel comfortable doing it. I don't talk about Tom Brady's marriage. I have the same boring conversation about Tom Brady that I've had for the last 20 years. Like, damn, this guy's good. And I think part of this is people are so hungry to have a Tom Brady discussion that is not that the first ounce of juicy gossip that we get, we gravitate to, because I think we also want to advance his legend. It's like, okay, we know he's the greatest, most famous football player there is arguably ever. Let's cross another threshold. Let's get infamy. Let's get tabloid. And I just kind of avoid it. Marriages are complicated. We're seeing this right now with Nia Long and Ime Udoka in a similar dynamic where Nia Long is the more famous of the two, and she came out and stood by her man. To me, I never felt comfortable talking about that dynamic. It is their business. I don't like talking about marriages, but people are really eager for that juicy gossip. I do think what Cole Beasley did yesterday was interesting with his statement, which could be coincidental.
He retired yesterday out of nowhere.
Yeah, he played 2 games with Tom Brady. Came back in what many would admit is a pretty good situation for his skill set given history. And his statement from his agents was, it's time to concentrate on being a family man, being a father, being a husband. And everybody read into that. It's like, what, does this former Buffalo Bill have a problem with Tom Brady? Did something happen in practice that he wants to give the media that? And it's all of us just wanting to be a part of this because we haven't had anything to say about Tom Brady other than his droning excellence.
Dan, the other thing you talk about, too, is like the last 3 pillars of superstardom, right? We had Derek Jeter, we had Michael Jordan, we've got Tom Brady. And it almost seems like we've gotten in to see Michael Jordan for who he really is. We've kind of seen Derek Jeter. This is like the last person that has been shielded by the media. And we're seeing, oh, wait, this guy is just not perfect like everybody else thought he was. We're seeing into something that's
Tony,
deeper.
He has been, for a public figure, Stugotz, he has managed to keep everything private, except for the aforementioned, Mike mentioned it, that how he got into this marriage, leaves behind. Her name was Bridget Moynihan, his first wife, and their child. And we don't know what happened there. But for 20 years under the Patriot Way, where Aaron Hernandez was concealed over there, Tom Brady has managed to be very, very private with a MAGA hat in his locker. He has managed to avoid all this crud and has now got Gotham Chopra and others working on behalf of the creation of how he sells the next part of his story in the image business, entertainment business, sports business, competitive business, which his wife also works in. He needs the next 10 years of whatever he signed for. Only guy who could sign that deal. 10 years, $375 million. Don't know what the job is. Don't know if I'm good at it, but I'm going to do it. 10 years, when I retire, if I retire, you'll wait for me. There's no such thing as that deal. That deal doesn't exist anywhere in entertainment. Not in Las Vegas at residencies. It doesn't exist.
It's a hard deal to pass up.
There's no such thing. Yeah. When I get around to retiring, 3 years, 5 years, what? I just dueled Mahomes. I'm pretty good. I don't ever want to let go of this. My wife wants me to let go of it. She said so in the magazine. Never letting go. It feels so good. Oh, my God. I get to ride a horse every Sunday over all of athleticism, all young people, all competitiveness. I'm still the greatest. Michael Jordan documentary. Fuck off. I'm still playing, and I'm winning more than you. It's amazing. And now, divorce lawyers, and it can't be a perfect life, but still, we are going to get Tom Brady 10 years of seeing yet more of him as LeBron angles for a team, Stugotz, and Brady got into this mess, some of it, because he was angling for a team. Like some of this that happened with the Dolphins where we're like, well, wait a minute, did he retire? No, he didn't retire. Did Schefter report that he retired? Yes. Was Schefter wrong? I don't know. He just was saying goodbye to Tampa. He was just saying goodbye to Tampa because he had a deal with the Dolphins. Oh, the lawsuit blows it up. Boston was mad. Tom Brady never said thank you. Why didn't he say thank you? Because he wasn't retiring. He was going to the Dolphins to make a different play.
Yeah.
To make the play that LeBron's making on television right now.
That one catch for 5 yards really set Beasley off. I mean.
Is where you are physically as peaceful as where you are emotionally at the top of sports, birds chirping at the height of achievement? Are you at the center of professional bliss at the moment, enjoying your championship? Thank you, Becky, so much for joining us, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm still, I'm going to milk this one for a little bit for sure. But it's always weird, after the season, it's always, whether you win or you lose, it's like going 120 miles an hour and then just a brick wall. And so it's a little bit figuring out ways to unwind and relax, but it definitely feels the best going out on a win, for sure.
Is there joy around all of it, or is it winning and misery? How are you wired and how are you built? Because you've met no shortage of curmudgeons who don't seem like they're happy unless they're winning all of the games.
I'm not short on competitiveness, that's for sure. I'm very competitive. But I also feel like, for me, I don't know if it's so much as I love winning as I hate losing. it's always a delicate balance there. But I had such a special group this year that, we really came together, and it was just a fun group. I don't know how to explain it. I've kind of never been a part of a team like that, with the chemistry that we had and the skill set that we had, the competitiveness that we had. So definitely still kind of reminiscing and reflecting, and definitely still enjoying.
In what ways, though? Because it does sound like hate losing. Explain that to us, because there's less joy in it than you want if you hate losing more than you love winning.
I hate losing. I think there's a way to lose. I think there's a way to win. And I guess, I don't know if it's equal or more. But for me personally, I'm very driven just to try to be my best that day. And sometimes it's good enough. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you got to regroup, refocus. But I think somebody who loves winning a lot of times, it's easy to kind of rub it in other people. I'm not really a rub it in people's kind of face. I just, of course, I like winning. And it's the opposite of losing. So I guess I gotta have some love for it. Because if I'm not winning, I'm losing. So
it sounds like you're a bit conflicted on the whole concept of the whole thing, because you are really accentuating the I hate losing. So take me through how unreasonably competitive you are. The people who love you would say this is everywhere in your life. You compete at everything.
Yeah, probably. If we're walking across the street, I'm probably gonna try to hustle beat you across. But at the same time, I'm not going to push you in front of the car coming down. So,
so not cutthroat, not quite so cutthroat as to be immoral, but you'll go right up. Right. How did you become that way?
Well, I'll tell you one thing: losing keeps me up at night, for sure. I like to be a problem solver. When we lost that game 3. I watched that film till about 3 a.m, up at 6, watch it, and just, I'm like a caged animal, in those scenarios at times. So I wish I could actually have a button to kind of turn it off, both ways, winning or losing. But I think I just grew up in a family of competitors. I mean, it was like, the clean plate club, who could finish their food first, everything was like a competition. Whether we're playing cards, my brother was an athlete, whether I was competing with him and his friends. I don't know what line you want me to draw there, but. Well,
you wish you could turn it off? You wish you could turn it off?
I wish I could turn my mind off, yeah. My competitiveness, I guess some of my OCD tendencies to try to get it perfect all the time. Can drive me crazy sometimes. And I think anybody with those tendencies, you can drive yourself crazy. And so it's finding, like sitting in my backyard, it's finding these moments where I can just kind of like, just be.
Are you applying a pressure there that's unnecessary, or are you associating with, I can't be great unless this is my fuel?
Watch my journey unfold. I'd say there's a little bit of pressure. I don't mind pressure. I love pressure. Fortunately for me, adrenaline works for me. Some people, it works against you. So I like those moments. Actually, it's those moments that I actually probably love the most. Crunch time moments, I love playing poker. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. And honestly, retiring as a player, that was one of the saddest things that I felt, was like, wow, like I'm never going to be able to hit a big shot again like that. Or like the YMCA noon ball runs just aren't going to feel the same as playing competitively. So competitive moments, intense moments, pressure-filled moments, I do love those moments for sure.
Why? How does that happen? You like the discomfort of them, or you're comfortable in the discomfort, or you see the growth in discomfort? What is it about it that, that has to be learned, does it not? You don't gravitate to that at the very beginning, do you?
I think it's something that's in you, but I also think it can be honed a little bit. I don't think you can just put it in anybody. Like it's not a skill set that you can, hey, do this and you'll learn how to be successful under pressure. You can get better at it. But for me, it's funny. I just text that saying actually to one of my friends, being comfortable in the uncomfortable. But for me, it's more about moments. Like I said, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. I love diving with sharks, jumping out of airplanes, stuff like that. And for an athlete, be in those big moments, it's, I guess, somewhat of a similar adrenaline rush. But you don't even realize it. For me, basketball has become so instinctual to me. It's not like when I'm drawing a play at the end of the game, I'm like, oh, I have to get this perfect. I'm just drawing what I see, and hoping to God it works and they make a shot. It's not. I don't know. I guess I don't feel it as much as maybe somebody who doesn't love pressure.
Give me the other places where you're the adrenaline junkie, or your top places when you think of diving with sharks or jumping from airplanes. The places that give you the most thrill are blank, blank, and blank.
I love playing big hand in poker, scuba diving down in the Florida Keys. I actually love spearfishing. And then I've jumped out of the plane a couple times in Texas. I wouldn't say I have a hot spot for that. But I just really enjoyed it. And it was something that I felt like I wanted to do, just because I'd never done it. So I did it a couple times. But I want to go cage diving with some great whites at some point, which isn't, it's going to be a little bit of adrenaline filled just because they're so huge. And then if I get, ballsy enough, maybe I'll get out of the cage.
Oh, swim with sharks. What do you like about a big poker hand?
Oh, man. I like playing the game. I like strategizing. I like the element, poker's a little bit like defense, right? And offense. You can do it all right and it still may not work out. I tell my girls that all the time, we can play defense perfectly. We do the scheme perfect and they still might score. That's why the score is not going to be 10-12. So I guess that the competitiveness of seeing each card, seeing if I can gain an advantage, either mentally. Well, poker is a lot mental and obviously math. But yeah, breaking down cards. I like those moments. Win, lose, I don't know. I can get on it. I've been on some, what do they call it, on tilt a couple times where it's like, lose a huge hand and I want to throw something against the wall. I don't, but I want to.
There is so much in your control when you're a player and less so when you're a coach, even though coaching gives you the illusion of control. Do you have a moment in sports that has given you more joy than being the head coach of the WNBA champions? Or does it put you to the side where you feel a part of it, but you don't quite have the grip of everything in your hands the way an athlete would?
Well, it's definitely different. Obviously, you said the illusion of control. Those are facts. You can, in practices, obviously you're trying to build habits that become second nature so that your athletes aren't thinking as much. So you do drills, to develop skills, drills for skills. So you can drill those things. For me as a player, I was involved in a lot of big games. I got to tell you, player or coach, that Seattle series that we had, I don't know if I've ever been a part of something like that. Obviously been in some big battles. I remember my first year with the Spurs, a series with the Clippers that was back and forth, super tense like that, just big shot makers and takers. So that was really fun. But for me, there's been a lot, honestly, on the court, whether that's, winning a game in the Olympics, hitting a big shot in the playoffs, in the final, whatever it might be. There's so many moments. They're all kind of unique in the journey and how you got there, and the situations surrounding each of those moments is kind of what makes it special and distinct, for sure.
Is there any time in the middle of the atmosphere of Las Vegas and Seattle to marvel at it, to be in the middle of it and be like, I can't believe that we built this thing, or are you too busy in the day-to-day that there's no ability to not even you couldn't have imagined 20 years ago that it would feel like that, right?
No, I mean, you can't even make those scenarios up. Those are the kind of scenarios you dream up in your front yard shooting baskets when you're little, right? I just had to happen to be the coach, but as a player, those are the scenarios you dream up. A back and forth battle or a come from behind battle on the court and then hitting big shots. I mean, that's, like I said, you can't, it's the same reason why games are so important, because like even in practice, you can try to simulate that, but there's nothing like a game pressure with a packed out arena. You just can't simulate it. You try as a coach, but it's just different. And that goes back to, the adrenaline. It either works for you or against you a lot of times.
Do you feel like a pioneer?
Some ways, yeah. In other ways, I'm like, this is basketball. This is not rocket science. There's, I think, a lot of room for growth in sports with women still. And so I'm always going to push the line, and the ball's never moving as fast as what I want it to move. Like I said, I think there's, on the men's sports side, half the population hasn't been tapped for their minds in regards to, game planning, scheming, and eye for talent, and that kind of work.
What are the differences that you've noticed between a male locker room and a female locker room?
Oh, man. Honestly, the girls, now this is not all guys, so I'm very much generalizing. But the girls kind of have less of a wall up, I'd say. They're a little bit freer to kind of act, be who they are. The guys are a little bit more guarded. That's one difference. It's interesting enough. The basketball is pretty much all the same, but how they, I would say the girls a lot of times, and again, I'm generalizing, but I had a special group this year that, I could put someone on the board, draw something up, they've never seen it before, and they could go out and execute. Now that's a skill set, male or female, it doesn't matter. That's a skill set that this team had. And one of the teams I've been a part of to do it at the highest level, male, female, doesn't matter.
Easier to reach women because of that openness than, again, generalizing, than men?
Yeah. Here's the funny thing, Dan. Have you ever been on like a fishing charter?
Yeah.
And the guy, so if you went and asked a fishing captain, he'll tell you girls are easier to coach than men because men just want to get in there. They want to like show how strong they are. They don't listen well because they just want to get on the rod and just start beast moding that fishing. And so I'd say that the attention to detail and maybe some listening skills. And again, like I said, it's not, this is very generalizing because I've been a part of and coached some guys that their attention to detail was impeccable. So I think it just comes down to the individual athlete. But I would say I did a little less repeating of myself with the ladies. I mean, there's no knock. Whoa, sorry about that.
Well, you don't have to be that careful. I understand why you're doing it.
A bat just fell. I don't know. An aluminum bat. My kid's bat just fell out of nowhere. So I don't know where that came from. But anyways.
You're being very gentle to the men. You're being very gentle, but you are. You're saying you're general. It sounds like it's just easier to coach women, though.
Different. It's a little different. I mean, look, the design and the makeup is different. I'm not one of those people who are going to be like, now they're athletes and they're competitive, both sides. And again, that goes down to the individual athlete as well, because I've coached really, really competitive. I mean, Manu Ginobili and Tim Duncan are probably two of the most competitive kind of shooting drill. Anything that you're keeping score, they're wanting to win. And I had a group of women, 6, 7 of them like that, 8 that were like that. And that's a real luxury as a coach, because again, you're paying attention more because I'm going to give you details and information that's going to help you win. So they definitely, and like I said, this team was just special. It was different. They had a lock-in factor that was exceptional, in my opinion. And again, I've been a part of those. Obviously, it's different 12 inches over too, on the input that you can have. You know, I'm there to support Pop and the guys. When it's your own team, you get to say things the way you want to say them, how you want to say them, when you want to say them. You know, the assistant coaching role is different in that regard.
How much mansplaining did you have to tolerate in the world of the NBA, or how did you tolerate it, or would you not tolerate it?
What do you mean mansplaining? Explain. Exactly.
Just male-dominated environments where men are used to being in charge. You're 12 inches over, and perhaps they're not listening to you as much as they might listen to somebody else because they're used to an environment where men are in charge and men rule and men explain things.
And you think that's only happening in the sports world, Dan? That happens every day in everyday life. Every job occupation is the world we live in. It's just the way it is. Pop, obviously, with the guys, he sets a standard of respect. Obviously, my playing career, I think, garnered their respect before I ever walked in as a coach. You know, they knew who I was. They followed because they're basketball junkies, and many have been to the games. You know, and I think what was cool too it was across the league. You know, Chris Paul, LeBron James. I mean, I could go Damian Lillard. I mean, so many guys. Almost all of them actually had reached out at one point and just saying how happy, you know, that I was part of the NBA at some point during my 8 years. It's really, they're not, a lot of them, they're great listeners. They want women more in the mix. But there is a reality of decision makers that go above and beyond that, that maybe can't ever envision themselves taking direction or being led by a woman.
I assume, but probably shouldn't, that the pay is a lot better in the NBA as a head coaching job, and perhaps that because of the pay, that is a better job than the one that you have. But I don't think I should assume that you want an NBA job, or that it doesn't insult you to suggest that an NBA job would be better than the one that you presently have.
Well, I don't think you can make that argument. The schedule is completely different. I mean, 82 games compared to 36 games, you're talking about quality of life in there too. In the NBA, you don't have quality of life. You just don't in the NBA. You're working all the time. It's what the job requires. The job requires you to be a workaholic. And so for me, basketball wise, it's ridiculous how similar it is. I'm sorry. It just is. It's a ridiculous argument to say, this pick and roll scheme is different than this pick and roll or this zone, or it's X's and O's wise. The X's and O's don't have any gender, and that's how ridiculous it is. X's and O's are X's and O's. After that, maybe it gets more attention. Maybe, you know, it's something that's never been done. But to me, it's not about a better job. I had more fun this year coaching this group of women than I've had in being a player included. I can't even remember. 2007, 2008, I had a really special team in San Antonio that I was a part of. But I don't, you can't sit there and tell me it's a better job. No.
And it sounds like this one gives you more balance, even though the obsessive compulsiveness of not wanting to lose is something that you turn. I can't imagine you not being a workaholic about this. I don't know that that champions can have a great deal of balance. They can aspire to it, but the jobs are pretty all-consuming. Well,
right. It's the illusion of it, right? You try to get there, but it is hard to turn it off. You know, I haven't had this kind of, I'll say, downtime where I'm not having to watch film. I'm not having to go to practice. But you still always watch film, right? And I'm going to go over and I'm going to dip my head into some practices.
Not today. Not today. You got it. No,
not today. But I'll be going over there tomorrow. I got to hit pop up and see if I can peek my head in over there and say hello and watch her practice. But it's I don't know. It's a blessing and a curse, I guess.
Becky, congratulations. It has at least in part helped you become a champion with the Las Vegas Aces. Thank you so much and congratulations. Good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Take care.